Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And as always, I am your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Monday. Got a lot to talk about on today's show. As always, before I get into it, I just want to remind you guys to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, and that's to really get your comments recognized and for me to interact with you and basically highlight your comment. And then for bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content here on the GSMC Sports Network. So with that, we got a lot to talk about today. To start off the show, we will recap last night's game between the Dolphins and the Eagles. The Eagles winning 31-17, so we'll get into that in a little bit. Then in the next two segments of the show, we'll talk about the early window games. We'll recap them. I'll give you my thoughts on them, and then we'll recap the rest of the late window games. And then for the final part of the show, we will preview tonight's game between the 49ers and the Vikings. So with that, let's get right into the first part of the show, which is recapping last night's game between the Eagles and the Dolphins. So this was definitely a highly anticipated game. Both teams coming in at 5-1. Eagles coming off of their first loss of the season last week to the Jets, and the Dolphins last week they beat the Panthers. So, yeah, both teams coming in at 5-1. And, the Eagles were able to get the win, get back on track, winning 31-17 over the Dolphins. We'll go through the statistics here. So, on the Eagles side of things, Jalen Hurts, he went 23-31, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception that actually was a pick six. It got deflected when he was throwing it, and it got picked off, and the Dolphins, that was a big play in the game. That actually tied the game up at 17. The Eagles only ran the ball for 99 yards. DeAndre Swift, he was their leading rusher with 62 yards. Jalen Hurts also had a rushing touchdown. Kenneth Gainwell had a rushing touchdown towards the end that put them up by 2 scores. A.J. Brown continues to impress. 10 receptions for 137 yards and a touchdown. Dallas Goedert, yesterday was National Tight Ends Day. 5 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown as well. Devontae Smith, he had 4 receptions for 49 yards. And Julio Jones made his debut with the Eagles, and he had 1 reception for 3 yards. And then on the Dolphins side of things, Tua Tagovailoa, 216 passing, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. The Dolphins really couldn't run the ball yesterday, and that was something we talked about on Friday's show. Eagles have a very good run defense, and the Dolphins were number 1 rushing. And Mostert was their leading rusher with only 45 yards. Did break off a 21-yard run, but that was really it. Salvon Ahmed, he only had 3 yards rushing. So, they couldn't really get anything going on the ground. Tyreek Hill obviously was their leading receiver, 11 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. He could have had 2 more in the beginning of the game. One of them got called back for a penalty, and the other one he just simply dropped. And his leg kicked the ball, and no one really – players were running after the ball because they assumed it was a fumble as it rolled into the end zone. But that ended up being incomplete. But he had a touchdown, of course. Jalen Waddle got banged up in this game. He had 6 receptions for 63 yards. But Dolphins struggled in this game at certain points. We'll go through the rest of the statistics here. So I'm trying to pull it up here. Yeah, but the Eagles, they got back on track last night, of course. They basically dominated time of possession, 36-43 to, you know, 23-17. They had 26 first downs to 12. That's that's the difference in the game. I mean, the Dolphins, like I said, at times they struggle to move the ball. The fourth down efficiency as well. I mean, 4 for 4. The Eagles were. Dolphins were 0 for 2. Total offense, Eagles had 355. Dolphins had 244. The Eagles ran 20 more plays than the Dolphins, 68-48. But yeah, I mean, it looked bad for the Eagles at one point because obviously, in the second half, Hurts had the pick six. But then they took the ball, down the field, 8 plays, 75 yards. Hurts connected with A.J. Brown for that touchdown. And then in the fourth quarter, late in the game, 13 plays, 83 yards, 6.5 minutes. Gainwell, had that 3-yard touchdown. And the Eagles get the win, 6-1. Dolphins 5-2. Kevin England in the chat says, "Are you concerned about the Dolphins being able to compete against the top teams in the league? Best team they've beaten so far is the Chargers." Yeah, I mean that's something we talked about last night because I was with him and some of my other friends. One of them said they were frauds, and yeah, I mean that is definitely something to pay close attention to because they beat the Chargers 36-34. Chargers really don't have a good defense. They beat the Patriots by 7 points. I mean, they beat the Broncos 70-20, but, the Broncos are one of the worst teams in football, though they did pick up a win yesterday, and we'll talk about that. But you go up against the Bills in Buffalo, and that's a statement game right there if you win that, and you lose 48-20. You turn the ball over 3 times against the Giants. I mean, you still won the game, but, you lost a turnover battle there. You were down 14-0 to the Panthers last week, although you came back and you outscored them 42-7. But you were down early in that game. And then this is on the road in Philly on Sunday night. And, the defense showed up. They got the turnover off of Hurts that led to 7 points. But you don't get that. I mean, does the score end up being 31-10 or, So, yeah, it's definitely something to be concerned about. I think, the Dolphins are still a very good team, and they have an electric offense, but, it's definitely something to, be concerned about. Because now, you're going to be playing the Chiefs in a couple weeks, and that's like, for the top seed, essentially, at the moment. The Dolphins should be fortunate the Bills lost yesterday, and we'll get into that. But, if they want to be considered one of the best teams in the AFC and in the NFL, they're going to have to beat some of these better teams. And so far, against the Bills and against the Eagles on the road, which, listen, if the Dolphins are going to want to get to the Super Bowl, I mean, odds are they're probably going to have to do it. They're going to have to win a road playoff game. But, yeah, I mean, that's something they were talking about on TV before I came on is, if you're going into Kansas City, if you got to, I mean, if Buffalo surpasses you in the division, I mean, if you're going to have to go there in the playoffs, it's not going to be easy. So, I mean, with the Germany game, I mean, yeah, it's a neutral field against the Chiefs, so, anything's possible. But if you're going to Kansas City in the playoffs, that's going to be a problem. And listen, I think Tua Tagovailoa is an MVP candidate. He's had a great year so far, but I think obviously when you got Tyreek Hill and you got Jalen Waddle and you're in this system. Now again, I don't want to get into the system QB discussion because I think Tua's accurate with the ball. He gets it to where it needs to be. Although he didn't have a great game yesterday, but I don't look Tua. I don't look at as like an elite quarterback. I don't. But I think having Tyreek Hill, obviously, and the guys I just mentioned, Waddle, that definitely helps. But, if you're going to go on the road and you're going to have to outgun a Mahomes or an Allen, well, the way the Bills have been playing lately, you never know. But, you're going to have to hang with them. And yesterday you go up against Jalen Hurts, who's a top quarterback as well. And, yeah, I mean, Hurts outplayed him, So, for the Dolphins, I mean, I still look at them as a very good team, but it's definitely concerning when you look at the losses and, they're by multiple scores and they're against, good teams on the road. And that's what you're going to have to do in the playoffs. So, but as for the Eagles, that's a big win for them. That gets them back on the right track. Obviously, Hurts, again, another turnover. Also fumbled the ball in this game as well. So, yeah, and they were and last night on the telecast they were showing the turnover differential from last year to this year. And I think it was like last year was like plus 12 and this year it was like minus 2 or something. So it was like a significant difference. And yeah, I mean you see it. I mean last week Hurts, 3 interceptions. Swift fumbled. So, yeah, I mean, that's definitely something to be a little concerned about with the Eagles. But, hey, they're 6-1. And I just want to say Nick Sirianni, he continues to be a guy that a lot of people just dislike. It's, talking up the tush push, how nobody can stop it, and, how everyone's trying to copy it. I mean, it's just, he needs to be humbled, seriously. I mean, he got humbled in the Super Bowl last year, but he's definitely going to need to be humbled again. And as a Giant fan, the Eagles are unlikable once again. Because there were a couple of years where, I didn't really, care. During, Wentz and the Doug Peterson era. Now they're back to being unlikable. But it's mostly because of the head coach. The head coach is just... he needs to, just stop talking sometimes, But, so the Eagles, they're 6-1. I mean, listen, you could talk all you want. You're 6-1 now. And we'll see what happens with the Niners tonight. We'll preview that towards the end. If the Niners win, they're both going to be tied. Lions lost yesterday. We'll get into that. So right now, Niners and the Eagles are still the top two seeds record-wise with their records. So, that's pretty much it when it comes to this game. Obviously, Dolphins, they got to get themselves back on track. Eagles did with the win last night. So with that, we are going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to recap all the early window games from yesterday. I'll give you my thoughts on that, and that is what we will do when we come back from our first break. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to recap the early window games, and I'll give you my thoughts on all of them. So let's get right into actually the first game, and we'll get the Giants out of the way first because they actually picked up a win yesterday, 14-7 over the Washington Commanders. And it was going to be a tough game. Picked them in the spread pool, said, you know what, this is a game that they are going to win because they own Washington. And that's exactly what happened. They did win, although they didn't dominate Washington. I mean, the defense played very well. The offense, they scored 14 points in the second quarter. And that was basically it. But then it got dicey at the end. Because Terry McLaurin, scored a touchdown, but he was touched before, he got into the end zone. Brian Robinson had a touchdown in this game, so that got Washington on the board. But in the second quarter, that was a great second quarter. The Giants, 8 plays, 98 yards, 4.5 minutes. Go down the field. Tyrod Taylor connected with Darren Waller, so he had his first touchdown of the season. And then Tyrod Taylor connected with Saquon Barkley for 32 yards. And the Giants got their second touchdown. That was 2 plays, 48 yards. And then Washington in the third quarter, 6 plays, 21 yards, 248. And Brian Robinson, from 4 yards, outscored there. Turnovers costed the Giants in this game. Sterling Shepard, who I was with yesterday, no one was really confident with him returning punts, and sure enough, and they even said it on the broadcast, and sure enough, he fumbled a punt. And then Saquon Barkley fumbled in this game as well. So if that doesn't happen, Washington probably doesn't do anything yesterday. But but the important thing is the Giants got the win. They get to 2-5. Washington still has a better record than them, but at least the Giants were able to win a game finally. Waller was their leading receiver. He had 98 yards receiving and a touchdown. Jalen Hyatt had 2 receptions for 75 yards, but finally throwing the ball deep. They actually had time to do that at points during the game. Barkley, 3 receptions for 41 yards. Obviously, the 32-yard reception was his longest reception of the game. Wan'Dale Robinson, 1 reception for 22 yards. Slayton, 1 for 22. A good game by the Giants. Their defense continues to play well these last 2 weeks. As for Sam Howell, he threw a pick, had no touchdowns in this game, threw for 249. Tyrod Taylor, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he threw for 279. So he didn't turn the ball over yesterday, but Shepard and Barkley did. Washington only ran the ball for 76 yards. Terry McLaurin, he had a good game, 90 receiving yards, 6 receptions. Logan Thomas had 4 for 51. But Giants get the win. We'll see what happens next week. Does Daniel Jones come back? They'll be playing the Jets, the Battle for MetLife, the Snoopy Bowl, whatever you want to call it. At least the Giants were able to, get a win. Defense has looked good the last couple weeks, so that's definitely something to be encouraged about moving forward. So that's my thoughts on that. Ravens and the Lions. So this game, a lot of people thought it was going to be a good game, and it just was not at all, not even close. The Ravens dominated this game. They outscored the Lions 28-0 in the first half. Lions got a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Jared Goff threw the ball 53 times, 284 passing yards, no touchdowns, and a pick. They ran the ball for 84 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs had a touchdown in this game. Amon-Ra St. Brown was their leading receiver, 13 receptions for 102. But, they just couldn't get anything going. Lamar Jackson had a great game. 21 of 27, 357, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Gus Edwards was their leading rusher, 64 yards rushing and a touchdown. Lamar Jackson had a rushing touchdown in this game. Gus Edwards actually ended up being their leading receiver. He had 1 reception for 80 yards. And then Zay Flowers had 4 for 75. Mark Andrews, another tight end on National Tight Ends Day, 4 receptions for 63 yards and 2 touchdowns. Odell Beckham Jr. had 5 for 49. But there was a couple of plays the Lions could have had Lamar when they were in the red zone, and the Lions defense just couldn't get him down, and he was able to improvise. And it was on the touchdown to Nelson Aguilar actually. They just could not get Lamar down, but that was a big win. It was a big win for the Ravens, a great win for the Ravens. The Lions, and we just talked about them last week, being Super Bowl contenders, and they very well still can be. But again, same thing with the Dolphins. You're going to have to go on the road and beat some of these better teams. And, they went up against the Ravens team that's pretty good, although has their flaws as well. And they got dominated. They really did. I mean, the Ravens, they just went up and down the field on them like it was nothing. And, yeah. And listen, with the Ravens, I mean, that's the good Ravens. But, from week to week, you really don't know what Ravens team you're going to get. Because, obviously they lost to the Colts at home earlier in the year in overtime, and they almost let the Titans come back last week. So, you don't know what you're going to get from the Ravens week to week. But they are a good team, and they showed that yesterday. All right, so let's get to the best game of the day, and that's the Bears and the Raiders. Bears with Tyson Bagent, and then with the Raiders you had Brian Hoyer, and Aiden O'Connell actually came in at one point. Bears dominating 30-12. I mean, I listen, the Raiders coming in, I thought, you know what, they got the better offense. They should be able to win this game. But that was not the case. The Bears dominated this game. Brian Hoyer was terrible, 17-32, 129, no touchdowns and 2 picks. Aiden O'Connell, he came in, he threw a pick, 10 for 13, 75 yards, had a touchdown. But yeah, he threw a pick. Yeah, they ran the ball for 39 yards. Josh Jacobs was their leading rusher. Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers both had 7 receptions. Devontae Adams had 57 yards receiving. Jacoby Myers had 50, and he had a touchdown. So, I mean, he continues to have a good season for them. But, yeah, Raiders were bad. Tyson Bagent, I mean, did what he was supposed to do. He managed the game, 21-29, 162, and a touchdown. Deontay Foreman was the MVP of this game for the Bears. He had 16 carries for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he also had a receiving touchdown as well. DJ Moore was their leading receiver with 54 yards. And yeah, the Bears, they win that game 30-12, and guess what? They will be playing on Sunday night next week. We might be seeing Tyson Bagent on Sunday night unless Justin Fields comes back next week. But, yeah, it's going to be Tyson Bagent possibly versus Justin Herbert, so get ready for it. It's going to be great. These Sunday night games have been awesome. I mean, the game last night was, it was okay, I guess, but, I mean, between the Giants and the Bills, and now, obviously last night's game sandwiched in between it, but now we might be getting Tyson Bagent against Justin Herbert. So, get ready for that. Next game, this game actually ended up being really good. The Browns and the Colts. Browns winning 39-38. So they held the 49ers to 17 points, and then they 38 points by the Colts. Very interesting game, to say the least. So Deshaun Watson threw a horrible interception in this game. Got taken out. Apparently he didn't have an injury. He was cleared, but they just didn't put him back in the game. So PJ Walker ended, at least that's what I was told. But yeah, left the game with an injury after taking a huge hit. But then apparently could have came back in the game, but they just didn't go back to him. But PJ Walker, he ended up stepping in 15 of 32, 178 yards. And a pick, no touchdowns. Jerome Ford was their leading rusher. He had a 69-yard touchdown run early in the game. Kareem Hunt had 2 rushing touchdowns. He ran the ball for 31 yards. The leading receiver was actually Elijah Moore. He had 59 yards receiving. And Njoku had 54. Amari Cooper, 2 for 22. And Donovan Peoples-Jones, 2 for 22 as well. And then as for the Colts, Gardner Minshew had a pretty good game. 15-23, 305 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Jonathan Taylor was their leading rusher. He had 75 yards rushing and a touchdown. Zach Moss had 57 yards rushing. They both had 18 carries in this game. So they got a nice 1-2 combination there with those two guys because Zach Moss has been running the football well for them. Josh Downs, he was their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 125 and a touchdown. Michael Pittman had 2 for 83 and a touchdown. He had that big 75-yard touchdown in the game. Alec Pierce had 3 for 53, and Jonathan Taylor had 3 for 45. So the scoring in this game, because there was a lot of it. So Jerome Ford, yeah, he had that 69-yard touchdown. Minshew connected with Josh Downs for a 59-yard touchdown. Then he had a rushing touchdown in this game as well. This was all in the first quarter. So Colts were up 14-7 at the end of the first quarter. And then a direct snap to Kareem Hunt in the second quarter, and that's how they got their second touchdown. Dustin Hopkins kicked a field goal So that put them up 17-14. The Browns. Gardner Minshew later in the game had a 4-yard scramble for a touchdown, put them up 21-17. Browns had a fumble recovery for a touchdown. Myles Garrett responsible for that, so that put them up 24-21. They kicked a field goal, so it was 27-21 at the half. Then in the third quarter, Dustin Hopkins kicked a 54-yard field goal, put them up 30-21. Jonathan Taylor from 5 yards out had a touchdown. Colts went 8 plays, 70 yards to get the touchdown, so that was 30-28. Matt Gay kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter to put them up 31-30. Dustin Hopkins kicked a 58-yard field goal, which I think was like the longest of his career. So that led to it being 33-31. Then Gardner Minshew to Michael Pittman for 75 yards. That put them up 38-33. And then Kareem Hunt had a touchdown late in the game, very late in the game. And that put the Browns up 39-38. And that ended up being the final score there. So, Browns win a shootout. They improved to 4-2. And the Colts dropped to 3-4. So we got 2 more games here, so we'll run through them quickly. Patriots 29-25 over the Bills. I just, how? Like, the Bills just played an ugly game. Josh Allen threw a pick early in this game, and that led to the Patriots going up 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. And once again, the Bills, they finally wake up, but it's, in the fourth quarter. They scored 2 touchdowns. They put themselves up 25-22, and Mac Jones led a drive, 8 plays, 69 yards down the field, connected with Mike Gesicki for the go-ahead touchdown. That put them up 29-25, and then ended up being the final score, and the Bills lose. And, they have not looked good the last couple of weeks offensively. They just really, it's been taking them so long to get going. And, they didn't run the football well. Dolan Kincaid was their leading receiver. Diggs had a touchdown. James Cook had a receiving touchdown. But, once again, the Bills' offense just couldn't get it going. But that's a big win for the Patriots. Mac Jones had a good game, 25-30, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So, listen, I said last week, doesn't look like the guy, but, at least for this week, he had a good game. And that's a big win for the Patriots, gets them back on track. And an unlikely win against the Bills. And then the last game here, Falcons and the Bucs. Falcons improved to 4-3. They win 16-13 over the Bucs. Baker Mayfield, 27-42, 275, 1 touchdown and a pick. The Bucs just really couldn't run the ball. Mike Evans was their leading receiver. He had that long touchdown early to tie the game, 40-yard touchdown. So, you thought maybe the Bucs would get back on track because the Falcons, last week, Desmond Ridder, 3 turnovers. But that wasn't the case. He didn't have any interceptions in this game. Drake London ended up being their leading receiver. But, ever since I came out with that video talking about the Bucs, they have not looked good at all. They were bad against the Lions, and they were bad in this game too. Younghoe Koo kicked a walk-off field goal at the end, 51 yards out. Falcons are actually in first place in the South, which is, and I counted them out. So right now they lead the South. But during the week, we'll try to go into detail with more of these games, because there's things to talk about within some of them, especially, Bills and Patriots, go into more detail with that. But obviously, I just want to run through the scores. But, so that's pretty much it with this segment. So in the next segment, we are going to go over the late window games. Once again, I want to remind you guys, I got to get it back up here, with the Patreon, of course. So obviously, to get your comments recognized, to tip or donate, make sure to go to streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. That's the link right there, and it's on the ticker below as well. And then for the bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this live broadcast, make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content on, for all the podcasts here on the GSMC Sports Network. So, With that, we are going to take our second break of the show, and then when we come back, we will go through the late games. We'll talk about them in the third part of the show. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we are now going to recap the late window games. The rest of them, obviously, we went over the Sunday night game to start off the show. So we'll go through the four other late window games. So we'll start off actually with the Steelers and the Rams. So I picked the Rams in this game. Just really don't trust the Steelers' offense. Obviously, their defense is what was going to keep them in this game. And the Steelers actually, ended up pulling out this win, 24-17 over the Rams, improving to now 4-2 on the season. Rams dropped to 3-4. Kenny Pickett was essentially a game manager in this game. 17-25, 230. No touchdowns, no interceptions. Najee Harris ran the ball for 53 yards and a touchdown. Jaylen Warren had a touchdown in this game as well. He ran the ball for 32 yards. George Pickens was their leading receiver, 5 receptions for 107. Deontay Johnson, he made his return from IR. He had 5 receptions for 79 yards. Steelers, they did what they were supposed to. Well, I don't even know what I was saying. I shouldn't say what they were supposed to do, but they did enough to, win the game here. Obviously, their defense forced turnovers. T.J. Watt had a pick in this game. Matthew Stafford really didn't have a good game here. 14 of 29 for 231. A touchdown and an interception. Royce Freeman ended up being their leading rusher. Darrell Henderson made his return to the Rams, obviously with the injuries. Karen Williams going on IR. They signed him back. So he had a touchdown in this game. So they ran the ball for 135 yards. Puka Nacua, he was their leading receiver, had 8 receptions for 154. Tutu Atwell had a touchdown in this game. And that was a 31-yard touchdown. And Cooper Kupp, Steelers did a great job. Cooper Kupp was really a non-factor in this game. 2 receptions for 29 yards. The interception by T.J. Watt, that set up the Steelers in this game. And that was right out of that was the start of the second half. And it was the first play, actually. Stafford was throwing a Kupp and T.J. Watt picked him off. And then Najee ran the ball. Pickett threw a pass to Najee again, and then he actually scored a rushing touchdown in this game. That was big for the Steelers coming out of the half. But, the big thing was late in the game, Steelers had the ball, and they went for it on 4th down. And it looked like Kenny Pickett was short of the line of game, but they gave him the first down, and that effectively ended the game. And the Rams didn't have a timeout, so they couldn't challenge. But, so the Steelers ended up getting a big win there. A lot of people really didn't expect them to win this game. And listen, I didn't really – I picked the Rams, but I didn't really like it. Steelers were getting the points in this game. Obviously, the Rams don't really have home field advantage, and Steelers fans are a fan base where they travel. And that was, that was a big thing in the game as well. The Rams just, with Karen Williams being out, that definitely is going to hurt them. Obviously, the Steelers' defense, they stepped up. And, Stafford really didn't have a good game. They held Cooper Kupp down. So, that was a big win for the Steelers. Like I said, not a lot of people really gave them a shot in this game. And they're 4-2 right now. It's not a good 4-2, but it's 4-2. Because they definitely could have lost the game against the Browns. They could have lost against the Raiders. But, they get themselves back on got themselves a 2-game winning streak going, which is good. And their next game is going to be at home against Jacksonville. So they actually have 3 straight home games. They got one against Jacksonville, one against Tennessee, and then one against Green Bay. So every one of those games is winnable. So so they improved to 4-2. Rams dropped to 3-4, and they play Dallas next week in Dallas. So that's going to be a tough game. So we'll see if the Rams can bounce back. So now we'll get into the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Seahawks winning that game 20-10. Geno Smith in this game, 18-24, 219, 2 touchdowns and a pick. He did throw a bad pick when the Seahawks were driving. Kenneth Walker had 26 carries for 105 yards. Jackson Smith and Jigba was their leading receiver. 4 receptions for 63 yards and a touchdown. So he gets his first NFL touchdown. And that's big because, the Seahawks were missing DK Metcalf yesterday. Also, Geno Smith threw a touchdown to Jake Bobo. So that's where his 2 passing touchdowns were. And then Tyler Lockett, 4 receptions for 38 yards. Colby Parkinson had 2 for 26. Noah Fant, 1 for 25. Seahawks win 20-10. Josh Dobbs, he had a rushing touchdown in this game. He's actually been pretty good, running the football. He's had a couple of those this year. But he really, through the air, didn't really do that much. Well, really anything. 19-33, 146 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. They ran the ball for 127 yards. DeMercado was their leading rusher for 48 yards. Dobbs had 43 yards rushing. The leading receiver was Marquise Brown. He had 3 for 49. Yeah, Cardinals really just couldn't get anything going offensively. And, they've been competitive in a lot of these games, but these last 4 games, hasn't been good. And it's not going to get any easier because then they're home against the Ravens. Then they're at the Browns. So, yeah. And Kyler Murray actually started practicing, so we'll see what happens moving forward. But, lost season for the Cardinals. All right, so now we get to the other 2 games. So we'll touch upon the Packers and the Broncos. So Broncos get their 2nd win of the season. They improved to 2-5. Packers dropped to 2-4. Jordan Love just continues to not look good in recent weeks. Packers got shut out in the first half. They finally got it going in the second half. They scored 17 points. And they were driving. But a costly penalty knocked them back because they were getting into field goal range, knocked them back, and then Jordan Love just heaved up a pass that got picked. So pretty much the same ending as 2 weeks ago. But A.J. Dillon was their leading rusher. Aaron Jones made his return, really wasn't a factor in this game. He had 8 carries for 35 yards and 3 receptions for 22 yards. Their leading receiver actually was A.J. Dillon, their number 2 running back. 2 receptions for 34 yards. That's not going to get it done. Romeo Doubs, he had a touchdown in this game, and it was actually like a fight for the ball in the end zone, so that could have got picked off. But Doubs was able to, grab it from the Broncos player and score the touchdown there. And then Jaden Reed caught a touchdown off of a deflection. So if you think about it, Jordan Love could very easily have no touchdowns, but, he kind of got bailed out on those plays. And then as for the Broncos, Russell Wilson really didn't do that much yesterday. 20-29, 194 yards, a touchdown, no picks. Javonte Williams was their leading rusher. He had 82 yards. Jason McLaughlin, he had 45 yards rushing. Broncos ran the ball for 145 yards in this game. So Packers' run defense, is still a problem. Cortland Sutton, he was their leading receiver, so he continues to have a decent year for the Broncos. 6 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. Packers lose again. That's their 3rd loss in a row. I mean, this is a team that could very easily be 1-5. Like if they lost to the Saints, they'd be 1-5 right now. Jordan Love has not looked good these last couple weeks, and I look at him and I think, he could be good, but he turns the ball over. The Packers' offense has just been horrible these last couple weeks. They just can't get anything going in the first half, and then they finally get it going, and they lose close games. And this is another one to a team that they should beat. But, has not looked good for the Packers. Broncos, they get a win, and next week they play Kansas City, so that's your reward for winning a game. And then speaking of Kansas City, the final late window game we'll recap here. So, they went up against the Chargers, and usually between these two teams, games are very close. And that was the case once again. It was a one-score game, although Kansas City did tack on a touchdown in the fourth quarter, and that put them up by 2 scores. And actually, those were the only points that were scored in the second half, because this game looked like it was going to be like, a 38-35 game, something like that. But only 7 points were scored in the second half, and that was by Kansas City. First quarter, at the end of the first quarter, was tied 3-3. Then the Chiefs outscored the Chargers 21-14 in the second quarter. Nobody scored in the third, and the Chiefs scored 7 in the fourth. Patrick Mahomes had a great game. I mean, he had I'm pretty sure he had over 300 yards at the end of the first half. He ended up finishing 32-42, 424, 4 touchdowns and a pick. Chiefs really didn't run the ball in this game that well. Isaiah Pacheco ended up being their leading rusher with 32 yards. Mahomes had a couple of runs in this game. The longest one was for 23 yards. Travis Kelce, National Tight Ends Day. I mean, he had a great game. 12 receptions for 179 yards and a touchdown. And, of course, Taylor Swift was in attendance, because why wouldn't I mention that? Marquez Valdez-Scantling had a touchdown in this game, 3 for 84. Rashee Rice continues to be productive in recent weeks. 5 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. Pacheco had a receiving touchdown in this game as well. And I think that was the touchdown in the fourth quarter. And it was, yeah. But, yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, they've been looking good. And Justin Herbert had a little bit of a rough game. 2 picks in this game. Had a touchdown, 259 passing. Joshua Kelly actually ended up being their leading rusher in this game, 75 yards and a touchdown. He had that big, long touchdown run in the first half. That tied the game at 10. Austin Eckler, he had 45 yards rushing, so he really didn't do that much in this game. Joshua Palmer actually was their leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 133 yards. Keenan Allen had 4 for 55, and Gerald Everett had 3 for 26, and he had a touchdown in this game. But yeah, Chargers, they dropped to 2-4. Chiefs look really good. The Chargers defense isn't, the best, obviously, but Chiefs are starting to get things going. Their defense looks good. I know Nick Bolton, he got injured in the game, so I don't know what his status is at the moment, but we'll know more during the week. The Chiefs defense looks really good. The offense got it going yesterday, so that was big. Obviously, they had Hardman on the team. He played. He had a kick return. Well, not for a touchdown, but like a long kick return or punt return, whatever it was, in the game. So, yeah, I mean, the Chiefs look good. I mean, they look like, right now, I would say they are the best team in the AFC, and there's no surprise there, obviously, because it just seems like it's always them every year. With the Bills losing, the Dolphins losing, Chiefs right now look like the best team in the AFC. Their defense is playing really well. And obviously, I would still like for them to go out and try to get another receiver. But you see Rashee Rice is continuing to produce, so that's good. Their rookie wide receiver. Valdez-Scantling had a good game. So Chiefs just continue to roll. And, we'll see what happens in a couple weeks when they play the Dolphins in Germany. I'm looking forward to that game. But yeah, and I think actually, who do they play next week? Are they they play the Broncos. That's right. Yep. I literally just said that too. I said Broncos. That's your prize. You're playing the Chiefs, but it's a home game for the Broncos. So I guess that at least that's good. You're at home, but yeah, it might be a rough game for the Broncos once again against the Chiefs. So with that, we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we're going to preview tonight's game, the final game of Week 7, between the 49ers and the Vikings. So stick around, and we will be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to now preview tonight's game between the 49ers and the Vikings. So obviously the 49ers coming off of their first loss of the season to the Browns last week, and the Vikings picked up a win against the Bears last week, but they're 2-4 on the year. And yeah, I mean, they're going to be without Justin Jefferson. 49ers are going to be without Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey at this current moment, it seemed like he was possibly going to play, but I'm looking on Sleeper right now, and it says he's dealing with a slight little tear in his oblique, but he's still expected to play tonight. Yeah, still not good to hear, especially for fantasy owners as well. I know I have him in a couple of leagues. And if Kevin Anglin is still here, we are partners in our partner league, and he is him and Tyreek Hill are our best players, and we need him to go off because we're kind of down by a lot right now. So hopefully he plays and he has a good game. But we also have Alexander Madison as well, and the 49ers defense. So we got some. Hopefully that could be enough, but we're behind by a lot of points, and our opponent has Brandon Ayuk, who's I hope doesn't do good because I'm going against him in that league and another league as well. So yeah, McCaffrey is expected to play, but yeah, like I just said, he's dealing with a slight tear to the oblique. But yeah, I mean, looking at the statistics for the quarterbacks, Brock Purdy having a great year, 10 touchdowns to 1 pick. The first pick was last week. Kirk Cousins is having a good year too, almost 1,700 yards passing. 14 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Christian McCaffrey, obviously leading rusher for the Niners. He's been great, both running the football and catching it as well. He has 7 rushing touchdowns on the season. Alexander Madison is their leading rusher for the Vikings, but he's only got receiving touchdowns on the year. Vikings kind of missed Dalvin Cook, but they went in a different direction there. And then, with the offenses, it's like so. It's like, the passing yards, Vikings are 3rd, Niners are 16th. But in rushing yards, the Niners are ranked 2nd, and the Vikings are ranked 30th. And then points per game, 49ers are 2nd, Vikings are 18th. So, the Niners, listen, they are the better team in this game, and they should win this game comfortably. But, you never know. And then on the defensive side of the ball, the defense, passing yards, Vikings are middle of the pack. Niners are top 10. They're 10th. They're giving an average of 215.7. Vikings are giving up 241. Rushing yards, Niners are really good against the run. Vikings don't run the ball well, so they're going to be pretty much one-dimensional tonight. Niners are 3rd, giving up 80.2. Vikings are giving up 112.3. So, listen, McCaffrey's probably not going to get a full workload. I think he's still, if he's playing, he's obviously going to be involved, but I think they're going to want to, not push it. So, the Niners Vikings are going to have to deal with Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason probably at points during the game. But yeah, they're not a great team against the run. So, yeah. And then points allowed, Niners are 2nd, Vikings are 21st. So, yeah, all signs point to Niners should dominate this game. Right now, the line is at +7. The total is 43. I'd probably take the over, and I would take the lines to cover, or the Niners to cover in this game. And Kirk Cousins, against good defenses, he struggles. And it's a home game, so we'll see. But Niners should win this game. Even if McCaffrey's not 100%, and even without Deebo Samuel, the Niners have their defense. They're the better team, and they should win this game pretty easily, I would think. And then as for the Vikings, a loss tonight, that gets you to 2-5, and it's just a lost season for you at this point. It already is, even with Justin Jefferson being out. Even if Justin Jefferson played in this game, I just don't think the Vikings would win this game. And like I said, they're going to kind of be one-dimensional. because they can't run the football, and the Niners are really good against the run. So, and we're kind of, in our fantasy league, we're kind of forced to start Madison because, we had James Conner, but he's on IR right now. And McCaffrey is, right now dealing with some injuries, but looks like he's going to play. So, hopefully he plays well. But, yeah. I mean, I think Niners should win this game easily. I'd be surprised. Like, if they lose this game, I'd be surprised. But I don't think it's going to happen. And also, I mean, Kirk Cousins on Monday night. Actually, let's see. What is his current record on Monday night? Because I think it's really bad. Let's see if I can look that up quickly. Or if anyone knows. Let's see. Kirk Cousins' record on Monday Night Football. Yeah, so Kirk Cousins has a career record of 2-10 on Mondays. Yeah, it's not good. Not good. Now let's look at his primetime record. His primetime record. So this is from 5 days ago. The Vikings are. Oh wait, well this is against the spread. I want what is his overall primetime record. Let's see. I mean, this is from a couple months ago. It says Kirk Cousins is now 11-19 on Thursdays. But that doesn't help me. But needless to say, Kirk Cousins is not a good primetime quarterback. Not good on Mondays. So, yeah, I mean, I expect more of the same. Also, kind of missed some chats here with what Kevin was saying. I'll actually go through those quickly. So, is Myles Garrett the best defensive player in the NFL? I mean, he's one of the best, but I think you'd probably give that to T.J. Watt. I would say T.J. Watt's probably the best. Yeah, and he also commented Darrell Hender's season and Mattis' season. So, Mattizn, which, Mattis' season, but it's not going to happen. He's not going to do good tonight against. I mean, maybe he'll get a touchdown at the goal line. I mean, you got to hope for that. But, but I don't really expect the ground game for the Vikings to really do that much tonight. I can't really. I mean, listen, the Vikings, can they somehow win? I mean, listen, Kirk Cousins has had a good year, but I mean, you're missing your top receiver. I mean, Addison has shown you stuff, and Osborne is okay, but you still got Hawkinson. But yeah, I just think it's going to be too much against the Niners, who are a better team. They're a much better team, and on top of that, Niners are coming off of a bad loss, so you got to think that the Niners are going to want to come out and just dominate this game because they're definitely, they're definitely fuming over last week's loss to the Browns, and how that game went. And, listen, this game's indoors. Weather's not going to be a factor here. So, just hoping that nothing happens to McCaffrey. And we'll see. Does George Kittle get a touchdown now? Because Kelsey got one. Goddard got one. Mark Andrews had touchdowns. Waller had a touchdown. Should have did a tight end parlay yesterday with all those guys. I mean, you would think Kittle and Hawkinson are going to score touchdowns, right? I know Kevin is still here. He has George Kittle in one of our leagues, so he's looking for a big game out of him to maybe pull off a improbable comeback tonight. We'll see. I'm trying to hold off my opponent because I have the Niners defense, but he has Brandon Ayuk, and I'm currently up 11. But I will get 10 points automatically to start the game, so that's good. But I mean, I expect Brandon Ayuk to have a big game tonight, unfortunately. Because with Debo being out and McCaffrey kind of dealing with some injuries, dealing with the oblique, I think Ayuk is going to play a huge role in tonight's game. He might score a touchdown tonight. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. So Kevin says 4 receptions, 50 yards, 2 tutties for Kittle tonight. I think that's doable. I don't think that's too much to ask. I mean, listen, they're missing Debo. So, you would think Kittle's going to get more involved because Kittle's been inconsistent. I mean, he had the monster game against the Cowboys, but, there's been games where he's just been non-existent. Last week was a prime example of that. He really he didn't do anything last week. But I think this is the week he gets involved, especially because the Niners are dealing with injuries. So, and it's National Tight Ends. Well, yesterday was National Tight Ends Day, but National Tight Ends Week. So you would think that they're going to want to get Kittle, a touchdown in this game. So we'll see. I mean, it's a game I'll obviously watch tonight. I'm excited for it. Of course, didn't really do great with the predictions once again this week. The Giants was really, in terms of like my spread pool, Giants were like the only game I got right in the 1 o'clock games. And that was one that I was not confident in at all. So Niners, I mean, if they win, they get me to 6 wins this week. Not a lot of people really did that good in my spread pool. The most somebody got was like, well, I think now it's like 9. Took the Bucs. They let me down. The Bills let me down. Lions let me down. Browns let me down as well. But yeah, we'll see what happens tonight. I think the Niners should win and cover. But I don't know. If there's one thing that I need I think we were reminded of this week is that football's any given week, any given Sunday, because I mean the Patriots, there was like no shot they were winning that game, and they won. The Steelers, they beat the Rams. The Broncos beating the Packers. Well, I mean the biggest thing is the Patriots beating the Bills. I mean the Packers I was not confident in at all, but I'm like I don't know if I can't pick the Broncos. And especially because the Packers are coming off of a bye week. So I don't know. It's and we were talking about it last night. Like every team is, I mean, every team has a loss, but every team is beatable and has had their bad losses. Like the Eagles and Niners had theirs last week. The Chiefs had theirs in week 1. Lions had theirs yesterday. The Dolphins, the Bills. I mean, all these teams have had bad losses. So, I mean, once again, it's probably going to come down to like home field advantage for some of these teams. Like if some of these teams don't have home field advantage, then it's going to be tough for them in the playoffs. Because you look at the Dolphins and the Lions; those might be the teams that like need the home field. Because I really can see like the Dolphins going into Arrowhead to play the Chiefs and try to beat them to go to a Super Bowl. Now they got the offense, but I mean, listen, Mahomes over Tua, obviously. That's the difference in that game. And also the Chiefs' defense has been playing better. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll talk about a lot of different things this week, obviously, because I know I kind of ran through a lot of the games, but we'll, obviously devote certain topics from those games, into segments throughout the week. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the show today. I think everyone that tuned in today, of course, we'll be back again tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So make sure to tune in for that. Obviously, Monday through Friday is the football show, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. And then obviously the Patreon's after that, so I'll record that. The baseball show is Friday, 12:45 Eastern Time, so that's after the football show. So make sure, as always, you're tuning in for that. But of course, we got some shorts coming out today on YouTube, so watch out for that. Just giving my thoughts on what happened last night in the ALCS. So it's going to be going to Game 7. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So once again, thank you guys for tuning in for today. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And until tomorrow, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day. Enjoy the game tonight. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.